You are watching the MAPS Wellness Room. I'm your host, Miata Clark. Join me weekly for dynamic guests, tips, and advice. Most of all, positive energy. And remember, my friend, you have power. Welcome to the premiere, everyone, of the MAPS Mental Wellness Room, or the MAPS Wellness Room, excuse me. And we are super excited to kick off this show. Before I introduce our first guest, I want to just basically go down the list of what this show is and when you can expect it to be airing, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the MAPS Mental Wellness Room. Basically, each week, every Thursday at 4 p.m., a new episode will air. If there will be a week that we won't air, I will let you know beforehand. Every week, 4 p.m. And basically, this will be a show where experts from around the world will give tips and advice on different aspects of mental health, mental wellness, self-care, mental wellness in the corporate world, in your job arena, all of those good things. So we're really, really excited about that. And I will be your host, Miata Clark. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our first guest, Miss Kim Welcome. And those of you that watched the MAPS Mental Wellness Week events, she was the one that sang phenomenally, or one of the lineup guests that sang. And I told her that when I heard her sing, it just made me feel all whimsical and all that good stuff. And I'm sure it made you feel the same way. So welcome, Kim. Thank you for being our first guest. I really appreciate it. And before I give her a moment to tell a little bit about herself, I had the opportunity, the honor of speaking with her a few weeks back. And this is what I've learned about her, among other things, but I will let her go into that. So not only is she a singer, a phenomenal singer, she has 3 beautiful daughters. She was a marketing manager, and she has a company, a phenomenal company called Influential Voice. And so, Kim, if you can tell us how that came about, what it's about, and then we'll go further. But please, thank you.
Hi, Miata. Thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction. And yes, the name of my company is called Influential Voice. And I started this company because my background is in communication. I went to college, studied communication, and marketing and advertising. Those were my focuses. Came out, worked in the marketing space, marketing and sales. That was my professional background. I'm a trained voice actor. I'm a singer-songwriter. And at one point, I finally realized, you know what, all of these things that I was doing, all of these skills that I had acquired are the same skills everyone needs to navigate the corporate space. We all need to be able to market and sell ourselves at the job. We need to be able to connect with an audience from the stage. We need to be able to use our voice to get the attention, get people to listen to us. And so that's when I began my company called Influential Voice. And that is really, I started out helping organizations by helping their team members to communicate in a way that better represented the organization. And then that grew into requests for executive coaching, etc. Yes.
Wow. So I'm very interested as far as the influential voice is concerned. What seems to be, I guess there could be a lot, but what seems to be one of the few things that you notice that a lot of your clients have issues with, as far as not only having an influential voice, but even finding their voice, knowing when to inject their voice. And then I know we talked about specifically with women, like what do you see on a normal basis that tends to be the problem?
That's a great question, Miata, and I'll tell you, as a trainer in the corporate space with these companies, I began to realize that females, women, we have a different challenge in the corporate space. A lot of times women don't speak up. And I find, especially women of color, when you're in that space where you're one of few,
Mhm.
A lot of times women do not speak up, women in general, and then women of color even more so, right? So we have an
Right.
extra challenge, women of color, and specifically Black women, right? Because it's not just about women of color, because our challenges as African American women, that's even different too.
Right.
And I find that, and so we'll talk about the African American woman and how these are typically your high performing women
Mhm.
who get into that job. They work hard because we were always taught, we have to be twice as good. But when it comes to going into that boardroom, adding value, joining the conversation, sharing ideas, this is where we tend to be quiet
Right.
because, we don't know how to be a part of that
Right.
conversation.
Right.
And then we become frustrated
Yeah.
because we are overlooked. So I work with corporate women who are high performing, overlooked, and undervalued because they lack the visibility that
Mhm.
they need in order to advance their careers. And those are the women that I like to help.
I love it. And this is not to exclude men because I feel that they are valuable and just as valuable, but to definitely put the magnifying glass on women and then women of color, I think is very important because to your point, it kind of gets skated over. And if we are going to have a community, a global community where we're able to have when we're talking about mental wellness, it needs to be addressed. And then we need to have actionable uh, things that we need to do to put in place to help everyone bring to the table what they offer, specifically Black women, because a lot of the times we are overlooked in the corporate world and at the table. It's very, very important. And that's what I love about influential voice and the fact that you were in the corporate world gives you even more merit to be able to help those women say, hey, this is what I've experienced, this is what you need to
Mhm.
do. And like you mentioned to me earlier, there is a point where you have to take personal responsibility to say, hey, once I have these tools that were given to me, then I need to definitely use them to better my life. So what advice or tips, and especially having three daughters, what advice or tips would you give them and other young women and women all over the world to help them find their voice? And then people in general, whether it be male or female.
Yes, and I love that, Miata, because this does relate to health and wellness. One of the reasons is because your voice is your essence. Your
Mhm.
voice is who you are. And when you suppress that for anybody or anything, it literally takes pieces away from you. And this is why, a lot of times people, period, are frustrated at their job because they haven't found a way to use their voice. They're suppressing it, they're sitting on it. And so, I'll tell you, when I first entered the corporate space, I was one of two other recent college grads.
Mhm.
The two guys, two white guys, Mitch and Jeff, boy, they used to get up and make sure that they blew their little horn, in every meeting with the CEO. And I would roll my eyes and go back to my desk and say, my work should speak for itself. I'll just get here and work really hard and they'll notice. And they became more visible and I became invisible.
Mhm.
And so I learned something from that.
Mhm.
Number one, my focus was wrong. My focus was, I don't want to be like Mitch and Jeff. They're so obnoxious, right? That was my focus, as
Right.
opposed to my focus being, now, how can I join the conversation in my
Mhm.
authentic way without coming across
Right.
as obnoxious? How can I, be myself, but still be a part of the conversation?
Right.
And so I will give these three tips to our audience, and I have so many, but I'll focus on three.
Okay.
One is, it's a myth that your work will speak for itself. That is a myth. That is a line that has, we've swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. But your work does not speak for itself because when you are hired, they're expecting for you to perform, right? So high performance, working hard is expected. It's not a differentiator. That's number one. Okay. So discard my work will speak for itself. Number two, when you get into meetings, that is your opportunity to highlight the contribution that you are making to the company. And it does not have to be obnoxious. So eventually I realized, okay, there is a way that I can talk about what I'm doing and my contributions without sounding like I'm being braggadocious or blowing my own horn, right? So you wrap that in stories about, okay, I encountered this situation. I wasn't sure how it would work out. Felt a little bit nervous with this client, but then when I realized blah, 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 I did blah, 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 and that actually worked. Or, my team, we worked so hard. Miatha did this, Mr. Clark did that. I was the one who came up with the idea, and we were able to roll this out, right? So I can wrap my accomplishments up in ways that are very palatable. And now I'm actually giving, when I tell this story, I'm helping everyone, right? Because someone else might have the same challenge that I did. And now I'm just telling, okay, well, this is what I did and it actually worked for me. This is not being braggadocious. This is being more of a sharer, right? Number 3 or 2 or 3, what is it? 3. Okay, another thing to keep in mind is, what should I give you? A lot of times in that corporate space, because we don't want to get wrapped up in all the politics going on, right? And all the corporate politics, so we stay away from that. We don't want to be a part of that. We become invisible because we're trying to keep our head down. We're trying to stay under the radar. Well, guess what? If you're under the radar, your name does not come up in those meetings where you are not. If you're under the radar. Under the radar is not serving you. And then we get frustrated when, some opportunity comes up and nobody called our name. We were never considered. But it's because we're focused on being under the radar. If your only interaction with your colleagues and seniors is when you're called into the boardroom to have meetings, they don't know you, therefore they don't remember you, therefore your name does not come up. I learned this from one of my really big corporate clients who sent me one of their employees, and they said, this girl is, she dots the I's, crosses the T's, but when we get into the boardroom, nobody remembers her. And they wanted me to work with her. And that's when I realized, you know what? Those relationships, that relationship building is a part of you building your career. So you don't have to be a part of corporate politics, but think of it in terms of building relationships. Women are good at that. We can build solid relationships. Don't build relationships because you're trying to get something, but don't forget to build relationships. Do not have your head stuck and buried at your desk and hide behind your work and then expect to be visible. So we have to create visibility for ourselves. And a part of that is performance. I'm going to give you that. I'm going to assume you probably have performance. The second thing, I call it the PPR, is your presence. That means actually speaking up in meetings, which you are expected to do, by the way. Speaking up in meetings is not optional, just so you know. Okay, because I'll tell you, executives complain to me all the time about how people just sit there and they don't say anything. Then they later on hear what happened at the water cooler and how everybody thought that idea was stupid, but nobody said anything in the meeting, right? You're expected to speak up in meetings. It's not optional. And the R is relationships. Relationships trump performance any day. Look in your own company. You are performing 3 times as high as your counterpart who got the raise or who got the promotion, right? So I want you to test your PPR, take the PPR test. Is your performance up to par? Are is your presence up to par? And are your relationships up to par? Those are what are needed in order to advance your career.
Kim, this is so juicy. I had like 20 things just like fire off in my head, and I know we're running out of time. So definitely I want you to come back, because one of the things I want to talk about is how to navigate with your PPR, but how to stay out of the workplace politics. Because I think that gives people, we live in a society where there's just high anxiety, and I know for me, I'm one of those people that when I see, depending on what it is, if I see drama, politics, I'm like, you know what, I'm good. And I might be that one to kind of lay low under the radar because I just don't want to get in the middle of that. But to your point, if no one knows your name and you kind of lay low, that's not something that breeds, visibility. It's not something that breeds you having a voice in anything, because to your point, no one knows who you are. Even if they know you, they don't know what your capabilities are because, you don't speak up. So definitely want to have you back. I appreciate you coming on and being our first guest. How can people reach you?
I am on LinkedIn. You can look me up, Kim Welcome, Influential Voice. It's all there on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, Influential Voice Global. I'm on Instagram, Influential Voice, or put in Kim Welcome. There's not a whole lot of them out there. So you probably pull me up somewhere, somehow on any of the social media platforms. And today I'd also like to offer your guests a gift.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so that is it's my free webinar. It's like a workshop webinar, and it's called 7 Secrets Every Corporate Woman Should Know to Advance Her Career. No kissing up required. And so we will leave that link in this post for you. You can watch that at will, it's on demand. So go on and watch it. It's nice and short, but it will give you what I just told you and even more, a little more depth on that. You can take that to the bank, honey. Go on, log on the webinar, get your information, and start working it for yourself.
Yes, I love it. Well, guys, you heard it here first. All of those links will be in the description. And thank you again, Kim, for being here. Thank you to all of the audience for tuning in, watching us. And please join us on the next episode of the MAPS Mental Wellness Room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to be a guest here on the MAPS Wellness Room, email us at themapswellnessroom@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm sending light, love, and power.